This PetX Talk is brought to you by Natura Pets, Found Animals, and Dogwise Publishing.
Hi, my name is Laurie Hess, and I'm a veterinarian who specializes in the care of birds and exotic pets. And one of the things I want to talk to you today about is picking the perfect pet for your personality. I only work with exotic pets, so I work with birds, rabbits, ferrets, rodents of all kinds like guinea pigs and chinchillas, rats, mice, hamsters, gerbils, all kinds of reptiles, including turtles and tortoises, snakes, lizards of all kinds, and then some fun and different kind of exotic pets such as hedgehogs and potbellied pigs and sugar gliders. There's a little marsupials, and these are all amazing animals. They're great pets, but they're not great for everyone. And unfortunately, too many people rush out and on impulse just see these pets in a store or see them in rescue facilities and say, I just have to have one of those animals, without really thinking about what it is to have one of these animals, what the responsibility is, the care, and the dedication you need to make these animals healthy and happy in your life. So if you're thinking of getting a gift for someone as a pet, you really need to think also, is this person ready for this pet? Are you getting this gift for this person just because you like that pet, or does this person really want to have this pet? And is this person going to be responsible for this pet? You also have to think about the care of the pet long term. Most veterinarians are not trained in the care of exotic pets at all. And if you're going to get one of these animals, you really need to seek out the care of a veterinarian and the advice of a breeder perhaps on what this animal needs to stay healthy and happy and live a good life in someone's home. It can be very difficult to find a veterinarian who cares for these special pets. There are a lot of resources out there. There are groups that care for birds, there are groups that care for reptiles and amphibians, and there are groups that care for small mammals. These are all wonderful resources. Just be aware that on the internet there's quite a bit of misinformation out there about exotic pets, a lot of outdated information. Dr. Google isn't always as great as your local vet who might know a lot more about these pets. And unfortunately also, too many people just rely on the advice of the pet store. And unfortunately the pet store, although they're very well-meaning people in pet stores, often they're not up to date as well in the care of these very unique animals. So if you're considering getting an exotic pet, again, do your research first. And the most important thing is that you want to pick the right pet for your personality. So what does that mean? Different pets have different requirements and need different levels of care. So I'm going to give you some examples of the types of things you might want to consider if you're getting an exotic pet. If you're someone who stays at home a lot and works out of your home, someone perhaps who's retired and has a lot of time on their hands, you might consider a cockatoo or a larger parrot. These birds are amazing, but they really need a lot of care long term. They need to come out of their cages every day, they need to be socialized, they need to be stimulated mentally. These birds are incredibly smart, and they get very bored if they're in their cages a lot. They'll develop behavioral problems like picking at their feathers, picking at their skin, and even screaming. So unless you're really able to spend a lot of time with a bird like that, it's probably not the best pet for you to have at home. On the other hand, if you're someone who wants a bird and doesn't have a ton of time to spend with these animals, you might consider like a finch, a small bird that can look beautiful in its cage but doesn't necessarily need to come out and be handled. Finches can live very happily in a cage and fly around and look beautiful and be appreciated and are very social, but they don't have to be taken out of their cages. Now, on the other hand, if you have kids in a family and you want to get your first bird, for example, I would recommend a cockatiel. Cockatiels are great because they live upwards of 20 years sometimes. They can talk. They're very handleable by little children. They don't have a big, strong beak that could injure you in any way, so kids can handle them very easily. And they're just a lot of fun and they're gentle. Budgies, or parakeets as we know them, also can be wonderful for families with small children. So those are great examples of birds that you might consider as a pet that might fit your personality in some way or meet your needs depending upon what you're looking for in a pet. Now, what if you're someone who really just wants a pet to look at and doesn't necessarily need something that's cuddly or talkative or extremely interactive? You might consider a reptile. So reptiles come in all different shapes and sizes. There are turtles and tortoises. Turtles live in the water. Tortoises live on land. There are all kinds of reptiles, for example, a bearded dragon. That's a great first reptile for a family. They're very handleable, they're small, they don't get huge and take over your home, and they're great for little hands, little children who can handle them and carry them and not worry that they're going to be heavy or that they're going to be biting them. They're very, very gentle. Another reptile which would be great for a family is a gecko. Leopard geckos are very commonly kept as pets, and they're also wonderful for small children. They're cool to watch because these reptiles shed their skin, which is a really neat feature if you're a kid and you want to learn all about reptiles and how to take care of them. Watching them and keeping them hydrated by having to mist them and soak them daily, that's a responsibility you can teach a child, and they can see how reptiles actually grow and shed their skin. So reptiles are great. There's also snakes. Some people are a little iffy about snakes because you do have to feed them rodents. Remember not to feed them live rodents because live rodents can actually bite the snake and cause injury, but certainly feeding rodents to snakes once the rodents have been stunned or if they're already dead and frozen and thawed, that's what we recommend. So snakes are great for people too, and families that really just want to learn the care of an animal, want to watch it grow and develop, and are willing to put in the time to get the right light, UV light, the right temperature, having thermometers to monitor the temperature. Remember that reptiles are what we call ectotherms, or cold-blooded, meaning that they have to adjust their body temperature to the temperatures around them. So reptiles must live at a certain temperature, and you have to make sure you're meeting the needs of the reptile that you're getting, which is something you need to research before you get that reptile. So reptiles have a lot of care needs, but can be wonderful, particularly with families that don't need the cuddly pet, or perhaps for a very shy child, or a child even on the autistic spectrum that might be overstimulated by a barking dog or a skittish cat. So another animal that you might think about, if you were looking for something kind of trendy and you're out there and you want to stand out in the crowd, some of these more faddish pets like sugar gliders, which are little marsupials. They're actually Australian. They look like little flying squirrels. They have a pouch. They're actually not in the squirrel family. As I said, they're more like kangaroos, but they're kind of cool pets, and they live in a little pouch that most people wear around their neck and they can wear outside. So that's kind of a cool trendy pet if you're looking for something you really want to show off and stand out. Just remember though, with sugar gliders, you need to get 2 of them because they're very, very social, and they will actually chew on themselves and mutilate themselves if they're alone. They get very unhappy, so you need to get a pair. Something like a hedgehog is another trendy pet. Hedgehogs are amazing. They do a lot of really cool stuff. They do something called anointing, which means they make these little spitballs and they spit on themselves and they spit on their environment. And they do that to try to acclimate themselves into new environments and blend in. It's kind of a neat thing to see, and if you want a different pet that is going to have behavior that no one else's pet is doing, you might want to consider a hedgehog. They're a little prickly, so you have to be careful if you have children with small hands, and you have to show them how to hold the animal. And you have to remember that hedgehogs are actually nocturnal pets. So if you're a light sleeper, you want to be careful because these animals are running in a wheel all night long and might keep you awake. The same is true for hamsters who run in wheels, and chinchillas. Chinchillas are another great pet for somebody, who wants something up at night with them. If you're a night owl and you work all day, so a hedgehog, a chinchilla, a hamster, they're going to be up with you at night and they'll interact with you on your schedule. So there's some other pets that you might want to consider too. If you're somebody who's kind of a hipster and likes to go outdoors, you might want to choose a pet like a pet chicken. I know that sounds crazy, but backyard chickens are very trendy these days. They're really a lot of fun. You get fresh eggs back. You get to pick your chickens, and there's all kinds of chicken breeds that are really amazing. They're beautiful. They come in different colors. They actually lay different color eggs. So some eggs are blue and some are green. A lot of people get really into chickens and have a whole flock of different kinds of chickens. So that's kind of the trendy hipster pet. There are a lot of other animals out there too. Things like fish, for example. Fish are great if you just want a pet that calms you down. So if you're someone who just wants to sit and relax, maybe at the breakfast table and watch your animal, pets like fish are amazing. They actually lower your heart rate, they lower your stress level, and if you have a very stressful job and you want to come home, you don't want to have a lot of responsibility with your pet, you might think of a pet fish. Then on the other end of the spectrum, high maintenance pet is the potbelly pig. Now potbelly pigs are incredibly cool animals, but they are definitely not right for everybody. And I stress this because everyone sees these cute little pot-bellied pigs that all start off at like 5 to 7 pounds. Just remember that those huge sows that you see on farms, they start off at 5 to 7 pounds too, and they grow into 1,000 pounds. So pot-bellied pigs can actually grow up to 150 pounds and still be considered a mini pig. Now think of a dog and think of what a 150-pound dog would look like. And then put some energy into that dog that squeals and screams and digs up your floor. That's what pot-bellied pigs are. And if you have the facility for them, that's great. So you need a yard, and they need to root, which means dig in the ground, and they need what we call a rooting area, which could be, say, a kiddie wading pool that you cut out a little door on, and you put some rocks, and you put some blankets, and you put some paper bags, and they can go to town on that. Otherwise, they're going to dig up your floor and your walls. They also make a ton of noise. So remember, if you're going to have a pot-bellied pig, you need to have neighbors that live far away or are extremely tolerant of your pet's behavior. So they're amazing animals. You can teach them to walk on a leash, and they are a lot of fun. But before you get one, if you want one that's going to stay smaller, you need to make sure you look at that pot-bellied pig's parents and make sure both of them are small, because if they're big, you're going to have a big pig too, and you have to be ready for that. And most people, unfortunately, get the pigs and they're small, they get big, and they turn out not to be quite what you want. The other pet that you might want to consider if you're home a lot and you want some company is a larger parrot, like a cockatoo, as I mentioned before, but an African gray parrot or an Amazon parrot. They're the real talkers, and they're really incredible animals because they live upwards of 30, 40 years sometimes. So these are animals that live in your family and are passed down from generation to generation. As an exotic animal veterinarian, I actually see them willed from parents to children to their offspring, and they stay in families and they become incredibly bonded to these families. They love them, they get passed on from home to home, and they're really amazing because they actually talk to you. A lot of birds will start mimicking you when you first get them, and if you talk to them, they will mimic your voice and understand you. But they actually talk in context. So it's amazing, you can imagine, to have a pet for 30, 40 years who actually talks back to you. Parrots are incredible. They're beautiful, they're incredibly social. They bond to their owners, so they think of you as their flock mates, and they really, really love their owners. But remember, when they get to be sexually mature, which for most of these larger parrots is usually around 5 to 7 years of age, they can get very frustrated, and they will scream sometimes, they will pick, they can be very destructive. So you have to really make time for these animals and realize that, you don't want to just pick that parrot because it's so beautiful and it talks. Those are great features in a pet, but you have to give back to it as well. So the main point that I wanted to make is that regardless of the pet you're choosing, you really need to think about what are you looking for in the pet? Why do you want this pet? Who's going to take care of the pet? Do you have the finances available for these pets? As I mentioned before, some of these animals live a really long time. Some of them require very specific setups, like the reptiles, needing light and heat and humidity gauges. Some of them need a lot of space. Think about your neighbors and think about who's hearing this pet. Think about what you're going to do if you give this pet to your child when the child grows up and goes away to college. I'm actually going through that now with my son. I have a cockatoo, and he lives in my son's room. And my son's going to be gone in a couple of months. Who's going to take care of that animal every day? Who's going to take him out of his cage and stimulate him and make his life fulfilling as well? So these are all considerations that you must have. And also don't forget that these animals need veterinary care. Unfortunately, too many people don't think about the fact that these animals need veterinary care just like dogs and cats. And they wait till these pets are really sick to bring them to the animal hospital for care. Most of these animals that I described, the rodents, certainly rabbits I didn't mention either. Rabbits are great pets too. They're prey animals, and these animals actually hide their signs. So they hide their illnesses until they're really, really sick, and then by the time their owners notice, they bring them into the animal hospital, and sometimes it's too late. So when you're thinking about getting that pet, make sure you consider whether you have the finances available, not only to care for the pet and feed it and house it and cage it, but also to take care of it and prevent illness from from happening. There's pet insurance for exotic pets out there is available too. So you want to remember that that's all part of what you need to think about when you're picking a pet that's right for your personality and your family. There's so many factors that go into picking a pet. You really don't want to rush. You want to talk to a veterinarian or a breeder or someone who's really knowledgeable about the care of these animals, what they're like behaviorally. Don't rush, don't impulse buy, because you're just going to end up being disappointed and you may end up having to give your pet to a shelter. That's unfortunately the case with many exotic pets. And remember that exotic pets are great pets, but they're not great for everybody.
We're here with Dr. Laurie Hess after her wonderful PetX talk about properly picking out a pet for you and your lifestyle. Dr. Hess, I want to follow up by asking, it's not just about today, it's about the future. What types of things do we really need to consider in making sure we're doing not only what's right for today, but also for the future?
I think that's a really important point. Too many people rush out and see that amazing, beautiful, colorful, chatty, talkative, in the case of birds, or just cuddly and adorable exotic pet, and they think, I just have to have that. And they don't think about the consequences when they bring that animal home. And some of them are immediate consequences, like, can I even have this animal in the area I live? Is it legal here? Should I check with some state legislature about this? I mean, there are simple pets like some animals that I treat, like sugar gliders, or these little marsupials, pet chickens, ferrets. Those are commonly kept pets, but they're not legal everywhere, and most people don't even know that. So thinking about, can I have them where I live? Are my neighbors or my family members going to tolerate this pet in my house? Is this pet messy? Is it loud? Does it take up a lot of space? Does it need to run around all day? Can I let it outside? These are the sort of immediate concerns. But then you also have to think about longer term. Are you going to live in this place long term? So if you set up an elaborate arrangement, for example, for an iguana that needs to climb and have branches and an enclosure that keeps heat in, and you set this all up, can you take that with you if you move? Do you have a landlord that's going to let you do that if you rent? Are you going to keep your job? Are you going to move? What if you give your pet to one of your family members, like a child, and the child grows up and then you're stuck with that pet? These are all things that you really need to think about. Even travel. A lot of us have to travel for our jobs, and that becomes a big deal. You can't just, take the snake to the boarding kennel and leave it there the way you could a dog or a cat. You need to make arrangements. And that animal might have a very, very elaborate arrangement at home that you can't just pick up and move. So you need to have someone come in and take care of that animal for you. These are all factors that you need to consider.
One of the other things that you touched on, and I'd like to have you expound on it, is not every vet treats every type of animal. Talk about that and why it's so important when we talk about exotics as pets.
Well, one of the reasons I chose to be an exotic animal veterinarian is that in veterinary school I got almost no education on these exotic pets. And when I started in practice, these exotic animals were coming in the door. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to know about these things. And people think that I know about all these animals just because I'm a veterinarian and we must know absolutely everything. I had to be Dr. Doolittle. But really, I had like a week of exotic animal care in my 4 years of veterinary school. So I chose to go back and do an additional 3 years of study as a resident specializing in the care of birds and exotic pets. But there are actually only 125 board-certified bird specialists in the world. And if you think about that, so many people have birds as pets. Millions of people have birds as pets. But there's 125 people in the world that really, really know in depth how to care for these animals. So when you're thinking of getting an exotic pet, you need to think, is there a veterinarian even close to me that I can take this animal to care for it? Or what if I have an emergency? Most emergency hospitals do not treat exotics at all. That's how I get half the patients I have, because they come to me when they can't find any other veterinarian and it's late at night and the animal's having an emergency and they've called 10 other places. So it is really important to think about, where can I go with my exotic pet, and realize that there aren't many people who are trained truly in the care of exotic pets to keep them happy and healthy.
Dr. Hess, thank you so much for all that you're doing in the pet world. We really appreciate it, and it makes a huge difference.
Thank you very much for having me.
Funding for PetX Talks is provided by Natura Pets. Natura Pets can help you optimize your pet's health with premium organic supplements from the Amazon and Andes Mountains. Visit naturapets.com. Dogwise Publishing, all things dog. For all of your expert dog book needs, visit dogwise.com. Found Animals, working towards big ideas that advance the safety and happiness of animals in our homes, our shelters, and everywhere in between. Visit foundanimals.org. This has been a Pet World Media Group production.